Greetings. We'd like to welcome you to today's presentation on values and inclusion in counseling. As your host of today's event, we come bringing you valuable information that we hope will be beneficial to you and your practice as counselors and therapists. We'd like to start our presentation off today with, first of all, reviewing the agenda that is before you on the screen. So we're going to cover our meeting norms, and as you will see from this screen, this is the gist of everything that we plan to discuss during our proposal and presentation today. So just to cover a few meeting norms, we ask that all participants remain muted if you are participating with us via the Zoom platform. If you are joining us in person, we ask that you will respect the speakers and remain quiet. You may use your chat feature or sticky notes for any questions or concerns, and we will be happy to address those. We also ask that you engage in the group activities, which will be beneficial to your practice.
Good evening. Our learning objectives for today's presentation will be as follows. Attendees will gain an understanding of how the intrusion of counselor personal values impacts the therapeutic alliance. Attendees will learn practical affirmative practices to help build stronger therapeutic alliance with the LGBTQ clients. And finally, attendees will learn how to manage conflicting personal values with LGBTQ clients to maintain the counselor-client relationship.
So at this time, we are going to allow each presenter to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Chandra Harden, and I am a professional school counselor currently at Sumter County Elementary School. My school houses second and third grade students, and it is located in Americus, Georgia. I've received my master's degree in school counselor education at Fort Valley State University and my educational specialist in school counselor education also at Fort Valley State University. I welcome you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Corey Hart. I am a professional school counselor at Davis Middle School located in Flowery Branch. We have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. I'm technically the 6th grade counselor. I received my master's degree in clinical counseling psychology from Brenau University. I've been in counseling now for 3 years, and I welcome you and thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Lavette Odom, and I am the 8th grade and head counselor for Freedom Middle School, which is located in Stone Mountain, Georgia. I received a professional counseling degree from Argosy University, and I later transitioned to the University of West Alabama to receive a Master's of Education in School Counseling. I completed an EDS specialist degree at Georgia State University in Leadership and Urban Policy Development, and I am currently considered as the Educational Support Specialist of the Year from my school. We welcome you to today's workshop, and we look forward to sharing valuable information with you.
So to start with, I'd like to go over some of the relevant definitions that will be useful to you in our in moving forward. So the therapeutic alliance, this is described as the cooperative working relationship between the client and therapist. Many studies support that it's one of the most critical factors in therapeutic outcomes. LGBTQ, this stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, although this can include questioning. And then LGBTQIA, you may see throughout our presentation. This also includes intersex or asexual. Affirming practices are a general approach to therapy that embraces a positive view of these identities and relationships. It is intentional about addressing the negative influences that homophobia and transphobia can have, and it, rather than a specific set of specific practices, it includes any practices that are affirming to these relationships and identities.
So we like to cover our rationale and our purpose for bringing this presentation to you. We hope to inspire counselors and therapists to see how the negative implications of one's values can have a devastating impact on our clients, those whom we have chosen to advocate for in this profession. According to Wade, when a counselor allows his or her personal values to muddle the interaction with the client's autonomy is threatened. The counselor can cause harm to the client by devaluing the client's personal beliefs and values. So, when we look at the non-affirming conditions placed on LGBTQ individuals, they are at higher risk for physical, mental, and emotional stress. And for this reason, it is important that we affirm these individuals and that we incorporate affirmative practices within our professional sessions with our clients.
I'd like to go over some of the supporting literature that's out there and some data that'll help back up our reasoning for going over this today. So as I stated previously, research supports that therapeutic alliance is a significant component of successful therapy outcomes, and research also shows that the factors that the therapist includes in the alliance may play a more significant role than the client factors. This includes the therapist's therapeutic orientation or the client's presenting issues. This is some data that I found on the Trevor Project, which is an organization that supports LGBT youth and specifically works to help ensure that they have the mental health resources that they need. So in their 2020 national survey, they found that 72% of these youth reported anxiety, 62% reported depression, and nearly 42% reported considering suicide. As well, half reported wanting counseling but were unable to receive it. It's very important, as we talked about before, that affirming practices are used so that these individuals, when they are able to get into counseling, that they have successful outcomes. As well, if the practices are non-affirming, this can actually significantly injure the therapeutic alliance and can decrease the likelihood that these individuals will continue in therapy or see a therapist in the future. There are several things that therapists can do to ensure that they're not using non-affirming practices. They can address any of the issues that they feel they have between their personal and professional values by utilizing self-reflection, seeking supervision, also pursuing psychosexual education on these sexual orientations, and taking some perspective-taking exercises and going through them to reflect on how they feel and how they can address these things in their practice.
We will now review some implications for practice. And these are some counselor roles and responsibilities that all counselors have to be cognizant of. As we are all governed by the American Counseling Association of Ethics, this dictates the standards that the counselors are to follow. Counselors also are to avoid any intrusion of their personal beliefs in the counseling process, and we should exercise restraint to prevent any harm to the client and or student. Research also states that 4 out of 5 LGBTQ students report they can't name one supportive adult in their school. These students suffer from lower self-esteem, struggle with academics, and often exhibit depression. It is the responsibility of the counselor to ensure that the rights of the clients are protected and that their personal biases do not intrude upon the therapeutic relationship and the goals set by the client. And this is going to be particularly true for the LGBTQ clients, as these individuals require this affirmative practices in order for the therapeutic alliance to be strengthened and also for them to be able to reach the goals of the counseling process. Additional implications for practice: personal values versus our professional values. We must be cognizant of how our personal values can hinder the therapeutic process for LGBTQ students. And as we look at the role of the school of the counselor, we are the advocate for the student and client and serve as a guide in the quest to achieve their goals. Williams states, it is incumbent upon all school counselors to explore their own cultural identity and how that identity might influence the values and beliefs of the students served. It is an integral part of the growth of the client as the counselors, but this growth can be stunted in the event that the counselor allows their personal values to intrude upon the client's progress. Implications for practice continue. We also have to look at counselors in training. Counselors in training are also governed by the same ethical guidelines, and these ethical guidelines are guided by their supervisors. According to the ACA Code of Ethics, a primary obligation of counseling supervisors is to monitor the services provided by supervisees. Counseling supervisors monitor client welfare and supervisee performance and professional development. Counselors must be very mindful that we train the counselors in training along the same ethical guidelines that we are governed by. So it is imperative that counselors and those in training who discover they possess some unresolved biases seek assistance to help resolve this issue or risk jeopardizing their future in professional counseling. They may be able to seek additional services from other fellow counselors, or they may have to actually ultimately consider a new profession. Implications for practice. Experts identify several considerations for the professional school counselor to explore in an effort to avoid imposing their values on students. Counselors must check our own values and check our power. We may become aware of students' values and beliefs, the student's developmental age, and make every effort to be honest with yourself and be honest with the student. We must evaluate our own cultural sensitivity and use unbiased language. We also need to be mindful of body language as well. We also may be able to seek supervision if we have any unresolved biases. Seek consultation, especially with someone with different views. Consider co-counseling and use referrals as a last resort, as this could be seen as a value statement. Affirmative practice, as stated before, is a measure that can be used to assist LGBTQ students with fully embracing their identity. Ensuring that the therapeutic relationship between the counselor and the client/student has a firm foundation. It is the counselor's duty to establish this without their personal beliefs being at the forefront of the process. As counselors, we also must maintain our professional identity. As Wade notes, counselors are helping professionals. Helping, meaning we use our skills to aid others, and professionals, meaning we are respectful of others. In this profession, our personal selves should not be the focus. If that happens, then we have lost our professional identity. Additional implications. As counselors, we can enhance the therapeutic relationship by implementing some of the following standards. Avoid inflicting harm on the client. Avoid imposing morals, beliefs, and values on the client. Provide affirmative and positive feedback. Assist the client in reaching counseling goals. Consult with counseling professionals when facing ethical dilemmas. Ensure that the client remains the focus of therapy, and advocate for clients.
We'd like to introduce a couple of assessments that counselors can use in order to assess where they are in their competency of working with members of the LGBTQ community. These measures were developed to assist them in detecting biases that they may have that can hinder the therapeutic process for these clients. Let's see, in efforts to assist school counselors in recognizing their competency, these measures were developed and can be used to measure specifically for LGBTQ students. We've included these in the PowerPoint and they'll be available for your use. Here, this one is specifically for school counselors, and it's a minority advocacy competency scale. This is an additional counseling specific assessment for general counselors.
So that was some very good information that both Corey and Chandra shared with us. And so here's something that we want you all to consider. And this is really significant for those of us that are school counselors. And according to a recent article in Counseling Today, many LGBTQ students identify school counselors as the one school staff member to whom they are most likely to disclose concerns related to their sexual and gender identity. And so with this in mind, school counselors are uniquely positioned in place to help advocate for our LGBTQ students and to provide the support that is needed for them to be able to thrive in this society. And so at this time, we're going to take a look at a couple of scenarios. And these are actually myths. And so one of the things that I want you all to do as we work through these groups discussion is, as school counselors and counseling professions, what course of action would you take to provide an effective, responsive intervention that will address our client needs? Okay, and so the way that we would implement this is we would do what we call a stop and chat, where you would talk with your table partners, and if you are participating with us virtually, then you would be put in a chat room. We're only going to allow the discussions to take place for between 3 to 5 minutes, but we hope that you are able to identify a solution and then find a representative in your group to share out your findings. So let's take a look at our first scenario. Here we have the question that is for us is, do parents need to be informed of their child's sexual and gender identity? We have a 10th grade student that discloses to her high school counselor that she identifies as lesbian. Most of her friends know, but she has yet to tell her parents. She fears their reaction because she has heard them make derogatory remarks towards LGBTQ individuals in the past. Must the school counselor inform the student's parents? Please take an opportunity to engage in a stop and chat discussion at this time. What you are looking to do is to determine if the school counselor should inform the parent, identify at least 3 strategies to support the student, and choose one representative from your team to report out your findings. Okay, so thank you for participating in that discussion, and we'd like to hear back from you regarding the information that you have determined. But please understand, the question that's before us is, does the counselor have a duty to inform? According to Abreu et al., the American School Counselor Association national model stresses the importance of parent and family involvement and its influence on the well-being of students. Although parent engagement is critical when working with our LGBTQ youth, school counselors should consider several factors before disclosing to the students' parents' sexual or gender identity. And so I like to highlight that for us because this is really important. We are not initially obligated to report or disclose that information to our parents. And the reason why is we believe that our students think that the lack of parent support, that they will reject their parents will reject them. We also have to consider any kind of abuse and unsafe home environments if the parent discovers that their child has had a change in their sexual or gender identity. Okay. So what would be some next steps for this student? Discuss the client's feelings about informing his or her parents. Prepare the client for potential negative parental response. Here, this is where, as counselors, we'll have that opportunity to collaborate with the parents. Even engage in a role play with the student to see how they will interact when they have that parent conversation. Schedule the parent conference. So when we get ready to introduce this information to the parent, then make sure that you're present with the student so that student will feel that support. And then finally, develop a safety plan for the student. Now, what if the student is presenting with suicidal thoughts or intents, or there is a situation of potential harm? This is when, in fact, the counselor must break confidentiality, as we have to follow the laws, the ethical laws and the ethical codes that are out there that guide our practice as counselors. We have to always operate in the best interest of our clients. So additional ways to support the student is conduct a suicide assessment in the event that they have expressed harm or intent. Inform the student or the client of the legal and ethical reasons why you had to break that confidentiality. Follow school and district-wide policies and procedures. Collaborate with the parents to establish some form of support for our client or student. And then a good way to get ahead of this is to begin implementing workshops at your school or conducting groups at your practice to foster awareness and acceptance. So we'll transition very quickly into scenario 2. Here we have whether or not students that are LGBTQ feel safe around school personnel as well as other students. And so what we find is that many of our students don't feel safe around either of these groups. And so let's look at the case that took place in 2017 at California San Luis High School. Here, we had a student newspaper that was published featuring the expressions of LGBTQ issues. A special ed teacher who did not agree decided to write a letter quoting the Bible and stated that those committing homosexual acts deserve to die. The school administration chose not to discipline the teacher for the action, stating that teachers, as well as students, do not shed their First Amendment rights at school. So we like to give you an opportunity again to engage in a stop and chat discussion. Determine how this teacher violated the Code of Ethics for Educators. So in your handouts today, you should have the California Code of Conduct for Educators. Identify 3 strategies you will implement to provide support for LGBTQ clients, and then choose 1 representative from your team to report out your findings. So thank you for engaging in that discussion, and we will have an opportunity to share out your answers. But let me bring your attention to how this teacher could have been considered harmful in violating students' rights according to the California Ethical Code of Conduct. It says that a certificated person shall not use for his, her own private gain or advantage, or to prejudice the rights or benefits of another person, any confidential information relating to students or fellow professionals. And so here, he could be seen as violating students' rights by showing a form of prejudice. I also like to point your attention to the Georgia Ethical Code of Conduct for Educators. Here in Standard 2 of the Georgia Code of Conduct, it says that an educator shall always maintain a professional relationship with all students, both in and outside the classroom. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, engaging in or permitting harassment of or misconduct toward a student. So the special ed teacher's actions in this case could have been perceived as a form of harassment, as well as opening the door for other people and other students to either belittle or harass the students who express their concerns of LGBTQT rights in the newspaper. So what are some next steps? Perhaps establish programs that will advocate for LGBTQs, provide training to students, faculty, and personnel, integrate prevention strategies and anti-bullying campaigns, and increase awareness of sexual and gender identity. It also may be helpful to formalize LGBTQ support groups. So now we're at the end of our presentation, and we like to entertain any questions or concerns. And I also would like to give my colleagues an opportunity to share out any concerns or questions that they may have.
I believe the purpose of this presentation for you all as counselors and school counselors is to gain more information and more knowledge about how our personal values can intrude upon the beliefs and the practices of LGBTQ students or clients. And it is imperative that as counselors, we uphold our ethical code and we are to maintain our professional standards as we are advocates for these individuals. And it is imperative that we show that advocacy and we are able to give them support and not allow our personal biases to intrude upon the growth of the client.
I completely agree. I feel that especially in schools, we have the responsibility to support our youth, and the data that we've shared in this presentation, as well as a lot of other research, shows that LGBT youth are at a greater risk than many other minority groups for these mental health issues, and that can be further exacerbated if they're not supported in the building. And having the supportive adults is critical. And being a counselor, that's your responsibility professionally.
So participants, we'd like to thank you for joining us today, and we will be providing all of the resources from this presentation to you via the email that you registered for. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.